Hello, everyone, and welcome to what we are calling Hit Pause, specifically the MCU edition. This is our attempt at an off topic podcast. We usually do these gaming podcasts on these channels, these live reactions, everything's gaming centric. But both of us are really big fans of Marvel. We talk Marvel all the time, and this is something that we've wanted to do. And we figured since we're doing this, we might as well jump into all things MCU. So I am Till from Spawn Trap. I am joined by Matt,
G'day, everyone.
and we are talking about What If today, because we're starting this at the start of the new series What If on Disney Plus, all centered around the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what would happen differently. I kind of wanted, like, we've been talking about doing a Marvel podcast for a while, or like we talk about movies back and forth and everything, and I think it's just naturally we just want to have those bigger discussions, and we just never could. And I think, pushing forward with this new channel, I think we both realized that this is an outlet that we could try to get this started. And after watching What If, episode one, I don't know about you, but I had so many questions. I'm like, all right, we need to start doing this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, as you said, I think every time that we've tried to collaborate on something,
Mhm.
we've always wanted to do something Marvel.
Yeah.
And I think this is a brilliant opportunity to be able to do that. And with What If, it leaves so many doors open for discussions.
Absolutely. And if you don't know what that show is about or what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is about, we are getting into big spoilers here. So we're not going to be shying away from anything. So if you haven't watched any of this stuff, I recommend go watching that first and then listening to this podcast, or use it as a an add-on piece, because I don't know about you, but starting with these Disney Plus shows from Marvel, anytime, because everything's episodic, it's weekly, it's so different for what we're used to for seeing like a big cinematic, it's a movie, and we get that full story in one movie. But having everything week to week, I just have more questions. I want to know about more stuff, so I tend to find myself leaning towards YouTube and seeing what other people's thoughts are and everything. So maybe this could be, maybe you're the same and you want to use this as a way to enhance your experience for What If and have these discussions. I personally, I'm actually surprised. I haven't really seen anybody doing this, like even the big names, like new rock stars, or anything like that. Not really analyzing what happens after these What If episodes. Now, spoilers for Loki. This is pretty much a show that follows that, with branching timelines. Everything's happening in a different timeline or universe. So it's the MCU, but different. And
Almost, what if
what if?
something happened?
Well, I want to ask. We know the answer. What if? Because the show shows us that. I want to know, then what? So that's what we're going to be exploring today. The first episode is about Captain Carter. It's about I'm actually going to play the video here if I can switch over. And I'm using Screen Culture because I can't find an official Marvel video for this, which is funny. But these are scenes from, this is probably going to get claimed. I don't know. This is the first episode. We'll see how it goes. But this is an episode asking what would happen if Peggy Carter got the super soldier serum instead of Steve Rogers. And, by the time we're recording this, there's two episodes out of What If. And they asked that question in a way that you're not really expecting. At least I wasn't really expecting it, because I knew that what this episode was about. But how they get there is, what if Peggy Carter changed her mind when she was asked, "Do you want to watch this process from up above the booth?" And she said, "No, I want to stay down here and see the process like firsthand." So I thought that was an interesting way of dealing with it. Um, Before we continue, I just want to know, what are your thoughts on the first episode?
Yeah, so um, it's an interesting episode because I thought the What If series would just simply switch the characters.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like like it would follow Steve Rogers' same story, but
Mm.
just replaced with Peggy Carter, and obviously some of the roadblocks and things that Steve had would be replaced with things that are relevant for Captain Carter, like a lot of the sexism and stuff like that. But I didn't realize they would be completely making a whole new story
Yeah.
out of it. And I think the way they changed it, that slight little bit, as you said at the start, where they Peggy decides she wants to be there to watch it,
Yeah.
and then Peggy, with her training, notices the guy in the room being sus. So,
Yeah.
which I think it's brilliant, and it was definitely above my expectations.
I can see how you would have been led to believe that initial concept that you were thinking of, because the big ones that they're promoting are the two first episodes for this. I mean, they showed some of the other stuff that they have planned, but in all most of the trailers, it's about Captain Carter, or the second episode, which is what if T'Challa, who is Black Panther in the main timeline, he ends up being Star Lord. So it kind of seems like they're introducing it in a way. What if these characters swapped? But I don't know. Being a comic book reader, I know what the What If comics are about, so I knew I wasn't really expecting that. So I think I had the right idea of where the show was going. But I wasn't expecting how they were gonna get there. I loved this episode. I thought it was very fun. It was a interesting new take on that first Avengers movie, or Captain America: First Avenger. Um, so I noticed a few things that, um, for me, for a superhero movie and everything, like, I can suspend my disbelief everywhere. But they made some changes to the movies that, and they kind of explain this in Loki. Like, what if, uh, like you're set on a certain path, but you did something a little bit earlier, or you did something a little bit later, right? So there are parts of this episode I find are a little bit out of order from the movie. Particularly, I think it was the scene where Red Skull found the Tesseract, or grabbed the Tesseract, which I think happened after the events in this episode, like her getting the super soldier serum, whereas in the movie, I think it happened before Steve Rogers got the super soldier serum. So I noticed that obviously, that, like, her making that change, that decision in that room, wouldn't have affected that, like, that change in the overall story. But I get why they did that, because it needed to be the pacing of the episode. So I understand why. What do you think about about the Red Skull's motivations changing? Because I
Um,
felt a little bit weird.
yeah. To be honest, I I was never a big fan of the original Captain America: First Avenger movie.
Okay.
I found it quite weak and two dimensional. So I like Red Skull as a villain.
Okay.
Um, so and it's good to have um to spice things up a little and change the motives a little and stuff like that. And his end goal to bring that champion in, that was very different.
I'm gonna agree with you, but then I'm gonna, like, contradict myself later. If we're gonna get into talking about the second episode, which I don't know if we will get to that point. But for me, I noticed, I'm like, oh, his motivations change, and there's like a new emblem on that door. I seen some other people analyzing about it, where they showed the champion, or the thing with the tentacles, which some people have their theories about what character that might be in the comics. And people are thinking they made that change because maybe that's going to play as some sort of importance later on, whether it's in the show or the movies or something like that. I don't know if I'm 100% there in agreement. It is an interesting theory. I didn't have a huge problem with his motivations changing, because his, there's it's sort of the butterfly effect. Something changes, your whole timeline changes, right? And in this movie, they set it up where Captain Carter took the Tesseract, so he couldn't make the weapons and everything with the Tesseract's power. So I can buy that his motivations have changed in this show because he didn't have the Tesseract. Um, and he had plans to get it back, and he needed like some other method to fast travel his goal. Um, but yeah, that's one of the questions I had on the series, like how things are different in that sort of sense from the movies. So I had those kind of questions. But then I'm trying to remember everything that happened in the episode now. Uh,
So, another question that would get asked is interesting to think about later on.
mhm,
They would have already known the Tesseract when Shield has it at the end.
mhm.
They would already know that it works like a doorway.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Avengers, in the main timeline,
Mhm.
they didn't know what the Tesseract was or how it worked. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about, did Shield open any doorways in between the ending of the episode leading up to Carter's return?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah. I think they did have a sense that it is a portal. You know, it is the space stone, so they know that it's a doorway. But Hawkeye was saying that in the first Avengers movie. He
Yeah.
was saying that it is a doorway to somewhere, and that door's open on both sides, right? Um, and yeah, there's the opening scene is everybody in the room, and that the guy who had the bomb, he waited until the procedure was completed in the movie to activate the bomb, whereas this is because he was in the room with everybody. I guess he thought, you know what, now's a good time, and he detonated a bomb and killed almost everybody in the room. So the big characters that we know from the movie, like I don't know if he was the general or something. Tommy Lee Jones is the actor's name, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Uh, like he died in that scene. There's another character from so there's the Agent Carter one shot. So he's that really sexist guy. So he plays a more prominent role in this episode. He wasn't in the movie, but he was in that one shot, and I believe the Agent Carter TV series. So they kind of introduced him into the show to play a bigger role. And I know people are thinking like, oh, that means the events of the Agent Carter TV show are still canon in the MCU, especially with Jarvis showing up in the Endgame. I would still say no. If like I have to, I'm in the camp that everything is everything from the Marvel TV side of Marvel, for like the ABC shows, Hulu, and all that stuff, are still technically canon until Kevin Feige says officially no. But I'm also I also have to realize that I need to accept that they aren't canon anymore because
So,
what? Go ahead.
my feelings on that is that they're not canon to the main timeline.
Yep.
I've always felt like that they're just they're what ifs of a different universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because especially like now that MCU or Marvel's got I should say it's got X-Men back again.
Yep.
You can think of those X-Men movies as canon, just in a different universe, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I would want to, but you could.
Let's not have the New Mutants. We can just and Dark Phoenix. We can just put
Yeah,
those away.
just forget those movies ever existed, and, and keep everything else. Yeah, I don't. I feel like the Marvel Studios part. I feel like they had a plan, they had a vision, and they were kind of strong armed, and had a lot of roadblocks along the way because there's other parts of Disney and other like legal aspects that they couldn't actually do what they want. So they had all these other TV shows that Feige didn't have anything to do with, and he's like, can't do anything, so it's gonna happen. Yeah, it's connected, but I can't. No.
And the shame about that is, I really enjoyed some of those
Mm-hmm.
actors and
Oh
the way
yeah,
they portrayed those characters, like Charlie Cox, what's her name, who played Jessica Jones,
I'm
and
blanking too.
the Punisher. I love those. Were
Yeah,
my main three. I love those and their portrayals within those Netflix universes.
yeah. I love the Netflix shows. Like, if I have to say, like, okay, only one side of the TV stuff needs to stay, it would be the Netflix stuff. And you, if we're picking, this is sort of like off topic, but that's fine. If we're sort of picking apart, you know, how those shows still remain canon in the MCU, I feel like before Endgame or before Infinity War, it would have all made sense. But afterwards, now they kind of contradict with each other in terms of concepts like timelines, which, like, so Loki kind of contradicts Agents of Shield's explanations on how time travel works. And there's the WandaVision had the book, the Darkhold book, which looks drastically different. In my mind, I think something looking different in two different projects within the same universe is fine. It's I've seen that happen in other,
I think they did that in the Evil Dead
what, like,
with
stuff
the
changes.
Necronomicon.
Okay.
I think there were two different versions of the books within the whole movie and
Yeah,
TV series.
there could be a lot of explanations on why it looks different.
Mm.
But I think at that point, you're like me, I'm reaching. So, like, if other people are like me saying, "Oh, it's doesn't mean anything," you're right, but we're still kind of reaching there, right? So, yeah, the WandaVision explaining stuff differently to how we've seen it in um, Runaways and Agents of Shield. Sort of contradict everything. And I I don't know. I have to accept that stuff's gone. But I think if of all that stuff, I feel like the Netflix shows are the things that contradict the MCU least, but also I think would enhance it if all that stuff stayed. But that's just me. I don't think Marvel Studios feels the same. I think they want a fresh start under their guidance, from what it seems like. So I don't know. Who knows what's gonna happen? But where was I going before that? uh, so in the guy from the one shot, he was featured in the first episode, more prevalent. So basically, I think they were insinuating that he would have been in that room in the movie. They just didn't show him, and because Tommy Lee Jones's character died in What If, he got promoted, and everything just kind of changed in the show after that because of that. Because you imagine if his character was still alive, um, Captain Carter's story would probably be different.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Because I think Tommy Lee Jones' character was actually supportive of um, Carter
Yeah,
at not at first, obviously, but by the end of the movie, he's supportive of Carter. So I think
yeah, well,
I think
yeah,
it would
because
be very different.
at the beginning, well, I don't think he ever had a conflict with her in the movies. He
Or maybe the conflict was just about choosing Steve.
No, but he was he was arguing with Erskine about that, because Erskine picked Steve to join, not Peggy Carter. So he's like, I don't think this guy should be here. He threw the grenade and everything as like a test. Um, but Erskine was like, no, this is the guy. But I don't think he ever had like a conflict with Peggy Carter in the movies.
Yeah. So yeah, well, pretty much if Tommy Lee Jones' character was in What If in that
Mm.
particular episode, I think yeah, it would have gone not so much completely different, but I think the progression of Captain Carter, the character,
Hmm.
would have been quicker because there would have been less roadblocks.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking about events. I'm just trying to remember how that episode went because I watched the second episode twice now, so that kind of overshadows what happened in this episode. But she she went to save Bucky's unit.
Hmm.
So she got to him before he was experimented on.
Yeah,
So
which I only realized recently
mhm.
that when they saved him in Captain America: First Avenger, he was already the Winter Soldier.
Yes, yeah. So they experimented on him to become the
Mm.
Winter Soldier. By that time when Steve gets to him, but in
Yeah, I
this
didn't realize
show,
that.
yeah, in this show he doesn't have any super soldier serum.
Yep.
And then later on in the episode, the train scene goes a lot differently. Where he doesn't Bucky doesn't fall, so he doesn't become the super soldier at all. So his timeline of events is completely different. He would not have been frozen or kept in a cryostasis from Hydra. Although I feel like a super soldier or a Winter Soldier still would have existed. I'll get into my thoughts into that later. Um, but also, um, Steve Rogers has an Iron Man suit because he didn't become a super soldier. But Howard Stark gets the Tesseract. He's able to experiment on it, basically use it like an arc reactor to make the first Iron Man, or they called it the Hydra Stomper, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what the unit's called it. They called it a Hydra Stomper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we get like an official title for it besides Hydra Stomper.
Yeah, because all the characters
Um,
kept referring to it as a Hydra Stomper.
mm, mm.
So Steve Rogers wouldn't have got frozen in ice. They changed it in this episode to um, Peggy Carter going through that portal that we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
Also, in terms of the Red Skull, he just died. He didn't get
Yep.
chosen by the Soul Stone to transported with the Tesseract to guard it on Vormir. So somebody else is guarding the Soul Stone in this timeline, presumably, if anybody actually is guarding it. Um, but one character I think that pretty much is the same is Arnim Zola, who the German scientist that they ended up capturing. He's still captured by Shield. He's still working for Shield. Granted, it's now under the I guess Shield doesn't exist at this point. Because what I found interesting is that Agent Carter is one of the founders of Shield, but she's gone in this timeline.
Yep.
But Shield still exists because she went through the portal. It's now the future. She's standing in front of Nick Fury and Hawkeye in front of the Shield logo in that scene in Avengers where Loki appeared. And that scene's different too. We can talk about that later, but those are all the differences that I remember from that episode. Am I missing anything? Anything
It
major?
was Steve who fell from the train, not Bucky.
He didn't fall though. He
Um,
was trapped by like they exploded, but he was in the
yeah,
invincible armor. So that was their plan to like capture him to get the Tesseract back.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, the only I can't think of any other major differences. But it does. I'm really. The main question is who set up Shield?
Yeah, that's my question too. So
Was it
somebody set up
Howard and
Shield.
Steve, or was
Probably, yeah.
how old was Steve when Peggy came back? Because I know
Oh,
in Civil War, which was 2016,
yeah.
Peggy was on her deathbed,
Mm-hmm.
and so 1945. So that's 71 years. How old was how old was Steve and Peggy in the original at the start of things?
I don't know. I can't do the on the fly math like that. But I will say, um, don't get too invested into the years in the MCU because they've contradicted themselves before. The famous one is Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Homecoming, where Marvel kind of just disregards that it says 8 years later in the movie, and they're like, no,
Yeah.
no, it's not actually 8 years later. Um, so there's a bunch of examples with that, and What If is no exception, especially with the second episode. Um, so I will get to that when we talk about the second episode. Um, so yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah, years and everything are different in these timelines. So you just have to like look at it that way. Like Loki explained it. Stuff might happen earlier or later. So things are different in each branch timeline, and which is very confusing. And you're like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But sure, I'll suspend my disbelief for the
So
story.
can we assume that if we take that Loki sort of timeline logic to it, things can
Hmm.
happen earlier or happen later?
Yeah.
Is it safe to assume that Peggy would have come back through that portal around the same time that they woke Steve up to sort of lead into a what if Avengers?
Happened with Agent or with Captain
Yeah,
Carter. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I think could happen. And I think that's what they're sort of alluding to. But again, who knows? We have to wait and see. They have said that there is going to be a second season to this show where Captain Carter is going to be the main focus. So they're saying that she's become like as they're writing the show, she's just become naturally the central character. So that's why they wanted to focus the first episode on her and make sure that she's in the spotlight. So yeah, I absolutely think we could see a continuation of that. So maybe they might not conclude. I am noticing that each episode so far is ending on a cliffhanger. Um, but they might not get to it this season. Maybe they'll get to it next season. But yeah, that is a good question, for sure.
And to be honest, with the cliffhangers,
Hmm.
I think it's just the watcher being a dick.
It does
Because
seem
that
that way
guy's a
because
dick.
yeah, because the way that the second episode ends, it's like, um, it's like, oh, also this big thing happens, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, let's get into analyzing what would happen in the MCU timeline here. Um, First of all, the next movie in the timeline order is Captain Marvel. Would things have changed in Captain Marvel for that movie? Based on how you
So the
remember it.
Tesseract would have still been at the Hydra base at the end of the movie.
No, it's with Shield.
With it, sorry, I meant so that in the What If episode,
Mm-hmm.
the Tesseract was at the Hydra base to open the portal for the Hydra champion, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they wiped out Hydra and they pushed the champion through, so Shield would
Yeah.
have that Tesseract, and they
So
did have it at the
that's
end of the
what.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to is that
Mm-hmm.
Shield would have still had the Tesseract.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see much changing with Captain Marvel's timeline
But
because
um,
yep.
so Nick Fury is in this movie.
Hmm.
Do you think Nick Fury's timeline would have changed because Shield would have started differently by different people?
Unless Howard, well, for that we have to know sort of how Fury ended up being part of Shield,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think we really do know in the MCU. besides
Yeah,
being
all
a
we
bit.
know is what happened with in Captain Marvel, I think.
Mm.
They haven't really shown any other flashbacks to his life at Shield.
And I, yeah, I can't really see any different impacts. Um, I think Shield would have ended up with the Tesseract
Mm-hmm.
earlier than the MCU timeline.
Okay,
I
yeah, that's
can't
a good point.
remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember whether they found the Tesseract with Captain
Oh,
America.
they did because he took the Tesseract down with him. But
Yeah,
in Captain Carter's timeline, they had the Tesseract. It didn't go down into the
yeah.
ocean. Okay, all right.
So maybe the technologies. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
since they've already got the Tesseract, it may not be Carol Danvers who becomes Captain
Mm,
Marvel
yeah.
because they start that testing.
Or there could be no Captain Marvel at all.
Yeah, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
And then if there is so let's say there's still a war between the Kree and the Skrulls. Um
Hmm. Hmm.
um would they still be searching for the Tesseract as their technology um to become refugees, right? They're trying to hide away from um the Kree. Would their plans have changed, or would they just be wiped out by the Kree because they have no plans at that point?
Well, it comes to how the scroll know about the Tesseract,
Mm-hmm.
whether the Tesseract story of it being a beacon for freedom or hope or whatever,
Yeah.
something that can help them, whether that's passed down through generations as a story, or whether one day they just happen to find out about it.
I feel like a lot of the um like space side of Marvel, like a lot of those alien creatures and everything, are aware of Infinity Stones.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think it's Earth or humans who are
mhm.
the ones catching up
Yeah, because
to that mythology.
they're seen as more primitive
Yeah.
people compared to alien races. Yeah. So I don't know. So yeah, Captain Marvel could be different or it could be the same. I don't think we have a definitive answer on how that movie would play differently. I have some theories on Iron Man. I actually made a Word document, but I don't think I'm gonna pull it up. I think I'm gonna because I was like, I need to write down some of my thoughts.
Here is my essay.
Here's my essay. I think the first big thing is Howard Stark. Um,
Hmm.
his timeline would be completely different. He already invented Iron Man before Tony Stark. So there's and he, he was looking for how to make the arc reactor work. He's I granted he's worked with the Tesseract at Shield in the original timeline, but like you said, they have it earlier now, and he has more time to make these weapons and technology, and he's had experience with it because he's made Iron Man. so
Yeah.
so I feel like this movie would be completely different. Tony Stark might not have ever become Iron Man. He might not have. I feel like wars and everything would be different. I think Howard Stark, his um motivations and business side of things, I think that would probably have stayed the same, but now he's got way more weapons to sell people. He's got I feel like things would be worse in the world because of it. But yeah, I don't think Iron Man would have I don't think Tony Stark would have become Iron Man in this timeline. I don't think Howard Stark would have died necessarily by Bucky, like because we know from Civil War that Bucky killed Howard Stark. Although I think there's a possibility his death still could have happened the way it happened in the main universe because Arnim Zola is still around with Shield. Um, and Hydra is operating within Shield with the Super Soldier program, and they took out targets using Winter Soldier. Sorry, they took out targets that didn't agree with their objective with Winter Soldier. So maybe somebody else became a Winter Soldier. We know that Bucky was not the only one. You know, there's other people in this program, so maybe they had some other star pupil in their midst that they
Well,
sent after Howard.
so if this would be, I don't know, given the timeline, it could very well possibly be that the Red Guardian became the Winter Soldier.
Okay, where are you going with that? Yeah, that could be, yeah.
Because if you look at the timeline in the MCU, they had Bucky
Yeah.
in the 40s,
Okay.
from the 40s onwards, because I think that's when the war happened. I'm not a history buff. Um, and then the Red Guardian, his
Yeah.
prime was through the 80s
Yeah.
up until 93, which we see in the Black Widow movie.
Hmm.
And I think that if they didn't have Bucky, that either would have gone, as you said, another pupil,
Yeah.
or would have used Alexei to become Winter Soldier instead of becoming Red Guardian.
So you think he would be working for Hydra then? Because in the Black Widow movie, he was working for at what is it, the Russian government? Or no, just basically, yeah. Was it the Russian government? And they were infiltrating Hydra, who was infiltrating Shield.
It gets confusing. I just assume if they're not good guys, they're
Yeah.
Hydra. And you never really know, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Uh,
That's just my thoughts.
that's a good theory. Yeah, I think there's a good possibility Howard's still alive by the time of Iron Man, like when that movie
Well,
takes place.
now let's have a think of this.
Okay.
So let's assume Steve Rogers continues being Iron Man through like the 50s, and whenever he gets too old and what to do it, basically,
Yeah.
would would they look at Tony Stark as being an heir to the Iron Man suit and title?
I don't think so. I think in where that movie starts, he's just a guy. He's a billionaire playboy philanthropist, as he likes to call himself. He doesn't. He just cares about selling the weapons. He's not the guy behind the gun. You know, he's the guy who sells the gun. I don't think by that movie he has any sort of motivation to become Iron Man. Because in that movie, it's when he was captured and tortured, that he, like, his motivations changed and he realized, you know, what he's doing is wrong and he wants to protect the world and do that as Iron Man. I don't think he has that motivation in this movie. In
But
this
what
timeline.
if, um, let's say, the motivation and the
Mm-hmm.
kidnapping and all of that comes from, Howard, to get back at Howard for setting up Shield and doing something, or to try to have a go at Steve Rogers for doing something as Iron Man. There's a lot of possibilities.
Wait, are you saying like he's jealous of Steve
No,
Rogers?
no,
No.
I'm saying someone kidnaps Tony to get back at Howard.
Oh, so like somebody from Hydra?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Because in the Iron
and
Man movie, it was the Ten Rings who
mhm.
who captured him.
And
Um.
at this point, we have to assume that Hydra is continuing in the shadows, like in the main
Oh
timeline
yeah,
as well.
I absolutely believe that. Yeah, because you know Hydra was built around or was built up by Zola.
Mm.
So and he's still right, like he still has the same trajectory in this timeline. So yeah, he absolutely could have still built up Hydra within Shield. And then yeah, he could still. I guess yeah, Iron Man could still exist in this timeline. I think that so many things have changed in the events of the first episode of What If. where I can see just Iron Man not happening.
Mm, mm.
Because so many things are different to how that movie starts. Um, but yeah, it could go either way. I don't think like in my mind where Howard is still alive, Tony Stark doesn't become Iron Man. I don't think what's his name? Jeff Bridges' character. Um
Obadiah Stane.
Obadiah Stane, box of scraps. I don't think he would have had any sort of significance or power, or maybe even be involved in Stark at all.
Now that's where it gets interesting.
Mhm.
Since we don't, and you memeing it
Yeah.
made me think of it. If we don't have the box of scraps
Yeah.
scene, do we have Mysterio?
Yeah. That's I don't think we would have Mysterio. Because like I said, if things play out in my mind how I see it, there's no Tony Stark, there's no box of scrap scene, there's
Mhm.
no motivation for Mysterio. He
Exactly.
creates barf, doesn't call it barf, and he becomes and he's happy with his job. He doesn't become Mysterio. So yeah, how does Iron Man end? I don't think there's any sort of significance going forward in terms of Captain Carter and the rest of that movie for what we already touched on.
Even the rest of the series, I think.
Mm-hmm. So Iron Man could or could not be in that Avengers movie, because I think where I want to lead this, I might not go past the first Avengers movie in this timeline, because that's kind of where they left off, right? He
Yeah.
goes through the portal, and it's the Avengers movie. So I want to kind of keep it where, like, we can kind of briefly touch about the new stuff, like like the Mysterio thing, because we kind of have an answer for that, or questions for it. But Iron Man 2, yeah, I don't think that happens. Does Whiplash happen
Whiplash could still happen because that was an issue
with
with
Howard?
the Stark family,
Yeah.
not with Tony or. Actually, I think it was Howard
Yeah,
who the issue was
Howard
with.
um kicks, I forget his name, but yeah, he sends that guy who is actually I think he's one of the uh they joked about his character in Black Widow. The Crimson Dynamo. I think his father was Crimson Dynamo. But they send him to, like, they deport him basically because he
Yeah.
um so yeah, I would say if there was a point where Tony Stark uh becomes Iron Man for revenge purposes, or to um you know clear
So,
his father's legacy, it would have been Whiplash coming to kill Howard, and then
um, one thing we didn't ask was, is there a war machine, or
if
is
there's no
technically
no, yeah,
Howard's?
there would be I think there would be a war machine, not necessarily James Rhodes, but I think there could be several more war machines with the U.S. government. I think.
Considering that Howard would be, you know, probably be heavily involved with Shield from the start.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
You
they
could
would want to
have
make that Hydra Stomper more modern, and with the rest of the soldiers, not just like one guy. So yeah, I think there could be several war machines.
um, but yeah, that's pretty much how I see it happening for Iron Man.
Hmm.
Um, I think, as we just discussed, I think maybe one of the War Machines or Iron Patriots takes the space of Iron Man in the Avengers.
Yeah, maybe, like, I don't even know if there is um an Iron anything in the Avengers. But yeah, it's possible. Like, why did they, like, Fury came to Iron Man Like he wanted Iron Man in the Avengers. Like his analysis after Black Widow's analysis says Iron Man for the Avengers, yes. Tony Stark, no. Um, I
Yeah,
think
that's really weird to think about. Maybe they just wanted his tech.
yeah. They said that they just wanted him as a consultant. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it's more like he's unique. He's like the superhero. He's the first one who said, I am this guy," right? Um, since Captain Marvel, since Captain America. So I think if there's a legion of Iron soldiers, do they need? Yeah, do they want an Iron Man on the Avengers? Does Nick Fury specifically want Iron Man on the Avengers?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, Black Widow, would her story change? Like, would she still be in that final? Would she still be an Avenger by the time of the Avengers movie in this timeline?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the timeline order doesn't have Black Widow on it.
Yeah, but so she's an Iron Man too, you know. So
Yeah.
she's dealt with Iron Man, and then we don't see her again until the Avengers movie.
Um. Oh, maybe because as you said, we don't see her again till
Mm-hmm.
the Avengers movie, and I would assume that pretty much her her trajectory would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
She would end up defecting to Shield, um, and becoming best buds with Clint.
Do you think her like we can get into Black Widow? Do you think her movie would have changed based on her the um flashback side
I
of the
think
movie?
the flashback side of the movie, I don't think so.
Even
I
with your
don't think.
theory of the Red Guardian?
I think they just replace him with another father figure.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's possible, yeah.
Um, yeah, and to be honest, yeah, I don't see much changing. Up and it all depends on. See, I'm jumping ahead, but I don't think anything changes with Thor either,
I disagree with you.
because I think it's all external to the Tesseract bullshit.
I'm gonna pull up my Word document because I forget the points I made for Thor. But I think Thor would have changed.
Well, they're doing a what if for Thor as well.
Yeah, but that would be a separate timeline again, I think.
Maybe. Who knows?
So my thoughts here. Um, I'll let you add thoughts because I want to kind of read what I wrote here, the recap.
Yeah, I think personally, I don't think Thor changes because the Tesseract doesn't stop Odin from banishing Thor. Um, the as it said in Infinity War, Thor's 1,500 years old,
Mm-hmm.
so there it's not like um the Earth having the Tesseract, because we all know that Odin was looking for the Infinity Stones before. Um, yeah, I don't see much changing because Thor would still get banished. Loki would still send a destroyer. Um, I don't think the maybe um maybe at the time maybe Black Widow might end up being sent instead of Clint to watch over Thor's hammer.
Okay. I think my thought
I think.
process was no. Go ahead if you have more.
Oh no, I was literally gonna say I was finished.
Okay. I think my thought process was that end scene is different in that it's only Fury and Hawkeye, but it's the same scene because they're together with the Tesseract and it's doing the portal stuff. Um, Loki's not there. He's not through the portal. Selvig is not there, and no other agents are there. I feel like whatever's happening in that timeline during the Avengers movie is different than what happened in the Avengers movie. Um, I think so. My thought process is on those characters are not there who are from the Thor movies, and um, the world might be different because Howard Stark is still alive or had the Tesseract early and everything. So I've so what I wrote here would be uh what happened in this episode might not have ultimately changed the events that occurred in the Thor movie. There's a possibility that Thor's time on Earth might have gone a bit differently. Shield might have been operating differently, so the events of their presence in the movie might have been different because the world would look different due to outcomes of war, thanks to the Hydra Smasher. Maybe Jane Foster or any other character's paths might have changed trajectory to never have interacted with Thor. Um, so yeah, so whatever the reason, the idea of Loki not appearing in the Avengers scene would hinge on how Thor's experience on Earth changed him to be more humble and selfless character that would have changed the outcome in the movie during the Frost Giants' attack. So I'm guessing that Loki was successful in his plan to trick Odin and Frigga that he had saved Asgard and Odin's life, possibly not be able to be interrupted by Thor returning to Asgard to stop his plan. If this were the case, the two would not have fought on the Rainbow Bridge where Loki fell, leading him to turn to Thanos and the Mind Stone to invade Earth with the Chitauri. So that's my thought process on why Loki's not there, why Selvig's not there, and how Carter's timeline could have changed Thor.
Yeah, it's the logic's all sound, but again, for me, it's the fact that those events don't have anything to do with the lead up to Thor being banished.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no reason for Loki not to go to the Frost Giants when he did. There's no reason why Thor wouldn't have destroyed the Frost Giants as he did. Because while they've traveled to Midgard,
But I still think Thor would have been banished. I still think like he would be on Earth, but maybe he doesn't interact with Jane Foster or Eric Selvig, and he doesn't have that same experience that he has in that movie. So that when Loki's like, "All right, Frost Giants, my dad's asleep. Come in, and we're gonna stab him." And they're like, "All right, let's do this." And then he comes in and stops him like he does in the movie. At that point, Thor comes in and is like, "Bro, what are you doing? You see what he did? He's trying to trick you into thinking that he saved Asgard, but he set this whole thing up. What if Thor wasn't there to stop him?" And he went through with this plan. He became he became the next heir to Asgard, and Thor's still on Earth. That's just my thought process.
I think in that timeline, I think we get the events of Thor Ragnarok.
Oh yeah, I think
sooner.
Yes, I think Ragnarok would happen and would happen sooner in this timeline. Yeah, definitely. I'm in agreement there.
Because, like, at the end of the day, in the main timeline, Loki did eventually succeed in becoming the king of Asgard.
Yeah,
and it didn't work out well.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought process.
But yeah, ultimately it could, like, nothing could change in Thor, but I think there's enough that could have changed with the Iron Man movies or Captain Carter and how that would have changed that maybe Thor didn't come back to Asgard to stop Loki.
hmm hmm
I just think that
Which
that could be a
then,
possibility.
and then we know from the main timeline that if we assume that Loki continued being Loki,
Mm-hmm.
the nine realms would fall into disarray.
Yeah.
Which, if you remember in the original, in the main timeline, in the Avengers, it specifically said that messing around with the Tesseract basically led everyone to Earth
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
it's. I think because Thanos didn't really show himself till Loki, you know, started
Mm-hmm.
not protecting the nine realms. I think it's Thanos himself who leads the Chitauri in the invasion of Earth in the Avengers parts of the timeline
To get the Tesseract.
to get the Tesseract from Earth. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that could happen. So you think by the time of the Avengers movie in Captain Carter's timeline, they're not trying to stop Loki, they're trying to stop Thanos.
yeah, yep.
How do they know that? Hmm.
Well, it's because it specifically said in the Avengers movie
Mm-hmm.
that the testing with all the Tesseract was a signal to the universe
Yeah.
that Earth is ready for a higher form of warfare.
Okay.
And I, to be honest, it's the same plot hole with the Avengers movie as well. It's like, how does Thanos know the Tesseracts on Earth to start with?
Um. Yeah. Um. That's a good question. I feel like a lot of the alien races in the MCU are somehow aware of what's going on Earth.
Yeah,
There's a thing in the comics too where it's like um everyone wants to invade Earth, but there's some sort of like universal peace treaty agreement among all the alien races and planets. Don't touch Earth. We agree it's neutral ground. Don't, but like people ignore that rule, obviously. But yeah, it's funny. It's like everybody seems to be obsessed with Earth for some reason. So they all know what's going on, even though Earth doesn't know what's going on with anybody else. So yeah, it's just funny to think about. Okay, so Thor, we're not too sure what happens, but like, um, but yeah, I feel like there should be there could be a reason why we don't see Eric Selvig and we don't see Loki in the Agent Carter timeline. So I think there it is open to possibilities. Um, so yeah, that pretty much leads to the Avengers. So I think this is going to be like if they show why is Captain Carter there, why did she show up through the portal, what does Nick Fury want her help with? I think is going to be very different to what the actual Avengers movie is. So I think that's interesting.
mm. Yeah,
Um,
it's very interesting.
is there like I'm just going to like briefly look at some of the other movies in here. Thor: the Dark World. I guess
I've
that
erased that movie from my head, so you'll have to remind me how it
okay.
starts.
So it doesn't exist in this timeline. All right, got it.
It doesn't
Uh,
exist in mine either.
it's funny because that movie is a very important movie to the MCU as
It
a
is.
whole. Um, so it's really funny to think about. Were you so you before the podcast you were mentioning um or it may have been during the podcast you didn't like the Captain America movie?
The original, yeah, the first Avenger. I'm not a big fan of.
Is there any other than the Dark World, is there any other Marvel movies that you just don't like?
Not a big fan of the Hulk,
Yeah,
but
we didn't even get to
oh,
the Hulk because it doesn't show it in this list, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. To be honest, do they continue experimenting to make super soldiers?
That's my
Yes.
question too. Yeah.
Okay, we end up with the Hulk.
Mhm.
No, we don't end up with the Hulk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think I started writing down some notes. The Incredible Hulk may or may not have gone differently based on people attempting to recreate the super soldier experiment. Since this is now based off Peggy Carter, who donated her blood for further testing and experiments, the project that would have led to Bruce Banner becoming Hulk might not have happened or might have gone differently. Since this is too vague of a question, I will consider that this movie would ultimately stay the same. So that's where I kind of laid. So I think we're both in agreement. It could have been differently, but it very much could have still stayed the same.
yeah, like the two main ones, Dark World, the first Avenger,
Yeah.
are the ones I tend to skip.
Mm-hmm.
I can go either way in the Hulk. Sometimes I feel like watching it, sometimes I don't. It's
Do you
mainly I
think it's a
don't.
good movie?
It's okay.
Okay.
Um, but I absolutely love Age of Ultron, which I know a lot of people don't like.
Yep.
But my favorite MCU movie is Civil War.
I feel like that's a lot of people's favorite movie. Some people don't like Civil
It
War, and I can understand why. But
Yeah, for me, it just has, from someone who's watched the MCU from the start and
mhm.
has probably seen everything from the start except for the first two Iron Man movies in the theater. Um, it's you've seen these characters, and then there's just so much character development
Mhm.
in Civil War.
That just pays off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I like every Marvel MCU movie. There's not one that I don't like. So I would say that Thor: The Dark World would probably be the bottom of my list, but I still consider it a good movie. So there's like movies where like I don't feel like watching that. If I'm on an MCU binge, I'm like, yeah, I'll watch it. It's a fun movie. But yeah, there's some movies that I absolutely love. I think they're top tier. There's some that I think are good movies, and nothing above that. But I don't think, like me personally, I don't think anything is a bad movie from the MCU or show, like from Marvel Studios side. If I'm just sticking with the Marvel Studios MCU, what's considered canon, I think everything has been good so far. Um, I That said, I think that would lead me to the second episode of What If, because I think we kind of established like where this timeline's going for Captain Carter and what we kind of think is going to happen in the Avengers movie version of Captain Carter's timeline. But before I go into the second episode of What If and what our thoughts are on it, I would like to just like briefly browse through the MCU movies here. Iron Man 3, I don't think Iron Man 3 would have happened. Is
Well,
it?
we haven't had an Iron Man 1 or 2 yet, so
Yeah.
3 definitely doesn't happen.
Captain America's the Winter Soldier. May
Captain Carter,
Yeah.
Captain Carter, the Winter Soldier, maybe.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Bucky. It would, if there was a Winter Soldier, it would have been somebody else. And
But
yeah.
I think there's still a time period where they dismantle Hydra.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Hydra still exists in this timeline. They're operating within Shield. So this movie kind of still happens but very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also based on what happens in the Avengers movie of this timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Um Guardians of the Galaxy would I don't think anything would have changed there, right? In both of
Yeah,
those
again,
movies?
uh, well, actually, it depends. If we stick with my theory
Okay.
of Thanos being the one who invaded Earth in the Avengers movie,
Okay, yeah.
would Gamora still be with him?
Mm. Okay, so maybe Guardians of the Galaxy would be different. in that sense.
because I Gamora didn't change sides till Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yeah.
and you see that in Endgame where she's still sort of loyal to
Hmm.
Thanos.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a good point. So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy could be different too, or just not happen. Um, Age of Ultron. Um, again, that's based off Tony Stark creating Ultron to try to
Yeah,
stop a future event. I don't think Age of Ultron would happen. I don't think Vision would exist in this timeline. I don't think. Um, I think Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver would be different. They would still be villains. Um,
yeah. I think Scarlet Witch still happens because from One Division, we
yeah,
know
mhm,
she's always had her powers.
yeah,
The stone just opened them up more.
yeah.
But I'm not sure whether Quicksilver gets his powers from the stone or not, because obviously he's dead. So we
My
never really explore his background.
Yeah, well, I think maybe he could be alive in this timeline, but I think if my theory is correct, just based on like text from how Marvel's trying to retcon the origins of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, not just through WandaVision, but previous to that, saying in like books and stuff, saying here's the history of these characters. They sort of hinted at Scarlet Witch saying like she got her powers from the Mind Stone, or did she? Did they just exist there all along? So I think they're kind of, they had to skirt around them being mutants in the MCU
Yeah.
because Fox had those rights. They're like they are enhanced individuals or whatever and experiments of the Mind Stone. But now that Marvel's like, you know what, we have the rights to the mutants back. Maybe we kind of say that they are mutants, and that's been their story all along. So maybe Quicksilver does get his abilities in another way other than the Mind Stone.
Yeah, maybe it's more his abilities are natural,
Mhm.
but maybe it takes him a bit longer to get to the power level that he was at in the original Age of Ultron.
Yeah. So
But
I
I definitely see those two coming back at some point
Mhm.
within this timeline to be villains.
Yeah, maybe not by this time in this timeline because maybe their
Well,
powers don't
so
manifest by then.
yeah, yeah, because I don't see any reason why the original bombing of Sokovia wouldn't happen. The one that kills their parents and gets them locked into their
Well,
building.
the only way that would change is if because it was a Stark bomb. So if my theory is that um, things have changed in terms of Stark's life and his
Hmm.
business and the way wars operate under Stark's name. Maybe there is no conflict in Sokovia. Maybe there isn't Stark bombs and stuff, or maybe there is and it's drastically different, right? Maybe they didn't.
Maybe it's Hammer Industries.
Maybe it's Hammer Industries. It could be. Maybe they're trying to. Maybe they have a grudge against Justin Hammer. Who knows? What about Ant-Man? I think I don't think Ant-Man would happen. Because I think Hank's
Oh, well,
storyline might be different.
I think I think Hank becomes this timeline's Ant Man.
Okay.
Well, technically, he sort of already is Ant Man,
Do you think he would
but
have
I
been
think
Ant-Man longer? Like, because he left Shield. Do you think he would have stayed with Shield and been Ant-Man for longer?
depends if that conflict in the meeting room changes.
Mm-hmm. What was the issue again?
Because
Why
was
was
it's been a very long time
Oh,
since I
they're
watched
trying
Ant
to
Man.
use his tech to make weapons, I think.
Yeah, and see, they wouldn't have needed to do that because they'd have the Tesseract.
Yeah. I mean, Shield still has the Tesseract in the main timeline, but just
Yeah,
Howard
that's true.
works on it earlier, right? Because he gets it earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I,
but I think we get an Ant-Man that's probably set just after the original Captain Carter
mm-hmm,
events.
yeah.
Um, and maybe we just get Hank Pym to later on just be more of a mentor for Shield and the Avengers.
Okay, yeah. I don't think Scott Lang becomes Ant-Man in this timeline, though. Are we agreeing on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Civil War doesn't happen.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
It could quite possibly still happen.
Hmm.
It all depends on who are these new Avengers in the timeline.
I think by this point in the timeline, things get completely muddy because I think maybe there is a civil war over something.
Mm.
But the events of Civil War happen because of Ultron, and because of Scarlet Witch, and because of all this other stuff. So I don't know. Does this movie happen? Like, do those events still happen in a different way?
Are we assuming mutants are in this timeline?
I'm not. I don't think
um,
I don't think anything would have changed where mutants would be front and center. Um, just based on what I've experienced from the MCU. I don't believe that, but maybe they could.
hmm. I mean, the only thing I could really see happening, like besides more of a just an ideology of whether we should register or not, is that if there is an overabundance
Of
of like
superheroes.
enhanced,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you end up with something similar to the Civil War comics,
Yeah.
where there's a disaster that happens that leads to the conflict. But when you take the Mind Stone out of the equation,
Yeah.
like we did earlier, I don't know if you end up with a lot of enhanced.
I don't think you do. So I don't think this movie happens. And I think it gets
Hmm.
muddy from here, the rest of the MCU. Cuz if you want to like look at it, Black
Well, Black Widow doesn't happen
yeah,
because there's no conflict
yeah.
unless she
Yeah,
decides
cuz she doesn't
to
go back to
go
Russia.
on that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what about Black Panther? Black Panther I think um I think
Would
Black Panther might still happen more or less the way it happened in the movie.
I because the key thing for Black Panther to happen is T'Chaka dying,
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
um,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
we
And he wouldn't have.
which we see in Civil War,
So
but
T'Challa
and
wouldn't become
and
Black
then
Panther by this time.
yeah,
Okay.
it could I think Black Panther eventually happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess we should say T'Challa eventually becomes Black Panther
Yeah.
because T'Chaka's got to die at some point.
But here's the thing. Okay, so I think T'Chaka would stay alive. I think cuz he's still the Black Panther, he's still the leader. I think Wakanda's still hidden from the world. But Killmonger.
Well, actually, in Civil War, we see that T'Challa is quite adept at using the Black Panther suit,
Yeah,
and
I think he knows how
and
to
he's
use it.
en- and he's enhanced because he keeps up with Steve when
Yeah.
they're running through the on the highway with all the cars and stuff.
Yeah.
So, is he really Black Panther come Civil War? He's just not the king of Wakanda.
He he knows how to use the suit. I'm assuming he got the Black Panther abilities. Like he took that uh whatever the flower stuff is, like to get
The weed. Yep.
the weed. Yeah, he took the weed to get those abilities for that movie. I don't think any of that's relevant though. I think I think Wakanda still hides from the world. And Killmonger still finds his way to Wakanda and challenges T'Chaka at this point. Kills T'Chaka.
Yeah, and I mean, um, I think I think Clue's still involved because
Yeah.
uh, I don't think anything would change with him being a thief.
The only thing is he wouldn't have that sonic arm because
Yeah,
Ultron wouldn't happen.
yeah,
And he would have more vibranium because
yeah. He
Ultron
would.
wouldn't have
Yeah,
stole it from him. Yeah. I think Killmonger becomes Black Panther in this timeline.
which I think's pretty, you know, pretty cool.
Yeah. I think I think from this point, who knows? Doctor Strange. Um,
I think Doctor Strange happens.
exactly how it did before.
So if we look at the like what causes Doctor Strange's accident
Yeah.
and think about what we know,
I think he still
with
gets in the
their
accident. Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing stopping him from being a bad driver per se.
Hmm. Okay, and he still goes to Camartage and
Yeah.
meets the Ancient One. Is
Oh,
Mordo
well,
still there?
maybe.
Okay.
It depends on how advanced the technology's gotten
Mm,
with the time that they've spent with the Tesseract.
that's a good point too. But yeah, I think from this point it's muddy. Thor Ragnarok, I think Ragnarok would have happened. I don't think Thor's back on Asgard, and I think Ragnarok happened sooner. That's just my
Yeah.
my opinion. And
The theory I'm going with is that in that first Avengers team up,
mhm.
if we think about it as a movie, I think that's the point um, where Thor becomes worthy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he's been on Earth this whole time, right?
So do you think? But
Uh,
he's in. Let's say he's still in New Mexico. I think that's where he
yeah,
ends
I
up.
think so.
Maybe he's in a different part of the Earth in this timeline. I don't know. Let's like how does he get to the Avengers though in order to team up with them? Like, does he's
Um,
like what?
Maybe he just sees the invasion happening, and he's like, "Dude, I've been living here.
But he has
I've just got to go do what I can to help."
okay. So, yeah. So if we're humoring my theory,
Mhm.
he's exiled on Earth in New Mexico. He's got no abilities. He sees an invasion happen in New York. He's not flying there. He's taking a bus there. Like he's gonna miss the invasion.
He could have learned how to drive.
Okay.
And let's just say, let's suspend disbelief and say he somehow ended up being like the original. Have you seen the original Incredible Hulk TV series?
I've seen some of it.
But you know the concept where he just like travels town to town.
Yep.
Maybe Thor ends up like that, traveling town to town, helping people, and eventually ends up in New York at the right time.
Mm.
Just
That's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And
from here we're getting to Infinity War territory. And I think everything gets muddy by this point. But really everything's going to be based off what happens by the Avengers time in Captain Carter's timeline. How the rest of the MCU goes from there.
yeah, pretty much, completely agree.
Now I don't think we want to. I don't think we're gonna like have time to break down the second episode. But what did
No, I
you
don't think we will.
and I don't think there's really any point to do that for that episode because so many things are different.
Yeah.
We're like I don't even know where to begin. Like I think it would serve no purpose. But what did you think about the second episode?
I actually enjoyed it more than the first episode. as I was saying before we started the podcast, I feel like the Captain Carter um, asked the question, "What if?" but didn't answer any of the what if questions in between, like the stuff we've just spoken about,
Yeah.
like what happens to Howard and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in the second episode, which is for people that haven't seen it, Yondu is still sent to pick up Peter Quill for Ego, the living planet. But instead of kidnapping Peter Quill, they end up kidnapping T'Challa because, as you know, the Ravagers aren't the smartest people in the universe. Which makes me think, with all the technologies, do you think they'd have a photo or something? And they end up getting T'Challa instead. And then basically T'Challa turns the Ravagers straight and become a good guy, basically. But they answer those questions like, what would T'Challa have done with the Ravagers? Okay,
Yeah.
they would have set him straight because of his influence and his morality. What else happens in that universe? Like, oh, okay, so Thanos isn't here, and he's a good guy, anti-hero,
Yeah.
doesn't want to destroy half the world anymore. And then you get a couple of background characters, like you see Drax. He's a bartender because he never lost his family. Nebula is in a better condition.
Yeah.
Because
Much
Thanos isn't a mad tyrant.
He's got the hair.
Yeah. But I think episode 2 did a lot better job at filling in those little other what if questions.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
So I watch the Disney Plus shows with my brother and my cousins, just like a group of people through we use the watch party feature on Disney Plus, which doesn't work perfectly. I think every time I watch, my stream speeds up and slows down. But we do that and we chat about it on Discord. So I feel like I've been looking at experiences online and everything. I feel like I'm in the minority in that I initially did not like this episode. The people I was watching with, they all loved it. Most people on the internet seems to love it. So I gave it a second viewing today, and so I changed my opinion on it. But I do like the Captain Carter episode better. I think first of all, this episode is great. My cousin was saying the stuff that was great outshined the stuff that didn't make sense. And I'm like, okay, you might be right. Because the voice acting was fantastic. I think everybody who was in this episode, I think they did a great job. Animation, everything is great. Music and all that stuff. And I love that there are some more insignificant characters that I felt should have had a bit more screen time during the movies, and they got Howard the Duck is a big one, because I thought Howard the Duck was great in this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like they got more time that they deserve to have. So I feel like this episode kind of filled that. What got me is that I'm so invested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know everything that happens, and they're presenting the show as this all exists within the MCU, and it has just the same amount of significance and importance as the movies and other Disney Plus shows. Even though it's an animation and it's alternate timelines, everything here still is within the MCU. So having, for the biggest example, Thanos just changing his tune, saying, you know what? You're right. I don't need to destroy half the universe. It's been my lifelong goal and ambition. Since I was a child on Titan. But yeah, you make a good argument. I don't see that happening. I don't see that possible in this universe. And I would have loved that. First of all, Josh Brolin, fantastic voice acting. He was hilarious this episode. But if this was like a comic book parody show like MODOK, I love this sort of stuff. I think it's fantastic, exaggerating the kind of quirks that happen in these fandoms, and just making it ridiculous. I love seeing that stuff all the time. But presenting it as, no, this is still the MCU. These are the exact same characters, just in different situations. Having Thanos just completely switch like that, and also for the first time seeing it, the Black Order, just their motivations changing, and where they're positioned in this universe, I just felt was weird. I thought just so many things just felt off this episode for me, who like being so invested in this world. But after second viewing, I kind of like settled down on that. But overall, I feel like I enjoyed the Captain Carter episode more.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I can see all the points as well.
Yeah.
Like at when you first hear Thanos talk about, well, he doesn't specifically say he's not going to do it,
That's
because you
true.
hear him talk about it a few times throughout the episode, trying to impress people.
He did say I'm enough of a bigger man to admit that I'm wrong, and you made a good argument. And then he says,
which doesn't mean in 10 years' time
yeah,
he changes his mind. But yeah, I can understand that. It's quite jarring, especially when we just finished with Thanos.
mm-hmm.
Like, we just went through Infinity War and Endgame,
Yeah.
even though, wow, that's like 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
But we've had so little MCU content in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're still familiar with that murderous, rampaging mad titan of a Thanos.
Exactly. The other kind of things that threw me off, which are the same things about stuff happening in different order or different times, like Captain Carter. First of all, this movie or this episode is positioned as happening at the same time as the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is absolutely not the case. The year is different. I think this episode, I think it's 2008 it takes place, which is Iron Man, and not Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is 2014. And the planet where they're getting the orb from, Morag. It's a planet that's submerged in water, I think due to climate change or some sort of disaster. And they sealed off the Power Stone in this temple that only gets exposed after 300 years, I think it is. So I think by this time it should be submerged in water. So
yeah, I think I remember reading something like that, and that Morag was covered in water.
Yeah. So in this timeline, somehow that planet, unless unless the period of time of when that opens up is several years, and then it closes back up again. But then also, Ronan was during the movie. Ronan's working for Thanos, trying to get who's sending him to get the Power Stone, to fight his war. Like sort of like the same way as Loki. He's like, all right, I'm gonna loan you the Mind Stone to do your thing. Sort of doing the same thing with Ronan. So I guess Ronan comes to this planet earlier, but not under the guide of Thanos. And
I just want to know how they know it's there in the first place.
Yeah, because I'm assuming Thanos would have told them. So they found out some other way.
Well, did they? I don't think they know what it is, because they only refer to it as the orb don't they? They don't
Yeah, they've
actually
heard,
call it the Power Stone.
but yeah, yeah, they might know what the orb, not necessarily that it's a stone, but what it is and what its power is and what it's capable of, but not necessarily that it's an Infinity Stone. Um, I just had this thought: what if he was sent there by the Collector? Because in this timeline,
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah,
yeah, the Collector's sort of playing the role of Thanos. Like he's the most
yeah.
powerful being in the universe in this timeline. Okay, so I guess that makes sense. Yeah, just certain things like that throw me off. But yeah, otherwise it was like I wouldn't say it was my first viewing. I thought, I think this is the first bad, like what I would consider bad Marvel Studios MCU thing that I've watched. I think after a second viewing and thinking of all that stuff, I think it's grown on me. So like my cousin was saying, there's a lot of good, like if you're like me and you can't get past all that stuff, there's a lot of good that outweighs all that stuff. So I would still recommend sticking through What If. I'm still gonna stick through it, because I think that kind of stuff you can push aside. Again, it's a superhero movie. We need to suspend disbelief. Not everything's gonna make sense.
Do we know what episode 3 is?
I didn't. I read it somewhere or I heard it on a video or something, and I can't remember what it is.
Um,
But
I'm just having a look on my phone now.
I know some of the things that are coming up. The big thing that I think everybody's looking forward to, which I think is going to be one of the later episodes, is a zombies episode.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Have you read Marvel Zombies?
Um, Marvel Zombies.
It's
No, I have. Maybe I can't remember.
I would recommend reading it. There's so many different Marvel Zombies books, but like the first series are the good ones to read. Ends in I don't think they're going to interpret that comic because it ends in a way that contradicts the way timelines work in the MCU, in which the first case of the infected was a superhero that came from another universe, who invaded this world and spread the infection. And by the end of that story, one of the infected characters, because they also time travel, so they go to different universes. Someone sent that character to the original Marvel Zombies universe to restart the infection. So it's in a cycle. So it doesn't make sense with how the MCU is setting up timelines. But yeah, it's a fun read. And so I'm glad that they're showing zombie stuff and What If. So it's great.
Um, I don't think we're going to get it because there's been no hinting at it whatsoever. But I would have loved one of the What If stories to be Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe.
Never know, because I think there's 9 episodes.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, I think there originally was supposed to be 10, but they had to cut a lot of ideas. One of those ideas was accidentally the same story or a similar story as the end of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 script.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, Kevin Feige's like, where James Gunn's already doing that. You can't do that in the show. And they're like, oops. So yeah, so there's 9 episodes. I think they've only revealed like a half or like a handful of what some of the stories are. I know that
I just had a poke around on the internet
Mhm.
Via Ask Jeeves, and apparently a lot of the rumor and theories is that episode 3 will be what if Loki succeeded on Earth.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought I heard it was something else though. There's no like plot synopsis online or something.
Oh,
Okay.
you know how Disney and Marvel keep things secret.
Yeah, where's that Spider-Man No Way Home trailer? Come on. Where is it?
Actually, there was confirmation. There was a confirmed date from Kevin Feige today. Actually,
Of when the
he's
trailer's launching?
yep. He said it will come out before the movie.
Okay.
He said it.
There was they posted something on Twitter today. They had the Spider-Man image and they're like it's like some sort of like Tom Holland interview inside of like a book. Like they had like some behind the scenes book thing explaining Spider-Man stuff. And everybody's like expecting because we got the Eternals trailer and everything. So everybody's like, "Where's the Spider-Man trailer?" And like, "Well,
Yeah.
here's this book." So I'm like, Marvel's just the king of trolls at this point. They know, like, I don't understand.
Like the two movies I'm most hyped for phase four, is Spider-Man No Way Home
Hmm.
and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I'm just,
Hmm.
I can't wait.
Yeah, yeah. Those are,
Oh,
I'd say those are probably the biggest movies of Phase Four. Um, maybe Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania might be a big one.
but that's still a couple of years
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
Still,
Yeah, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I can't wait for No Way Home, especially with here's the thing, the rumors, still rumors. I think I think part of the reason why Marvel's let's be honest, maybe Sony because I think Sony's in charge of the promotion of I think
yeah,
Sony's in
yeah,
charge of the promotion. So I think Sony's withholding the movies because
yeah.
I think the rumors got out of hand and they're saying this movie's nothing like that and we're going to let people down, so they're trying to figure out the best way to
Well, the funny thing is, it's supposed to come out in 4 months.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
comes out in December.
there's we nobody knows what officially what the movie's gonna be.
Yeah,
All we're
not even
basing it
they
off
know.
is rumors.
The editors are just hitting shuffle on the timeline of Adobe Premiere and just stitching clips together.
They keep delaying Venom. They could delay Spider-Man. I'm just
Oh,
saying.
that's right. Did
Hmm.
they dropped the trailer of Venom
Yeah.
on Spider-Man Day
Mm-hmm.
and didn't say anything about Spider-Man?
Yep.
Then, like the next day, delayed Venom.
Wait, so now wait, hold on. Where's Venom premiering now? Because it was in I think it was in
It's supposed to be
September.
October.
Okay, so it's still gonna be released before Far From Home.
Let there be carnage. Let me have a look. Um,
I think it'd be interesting. I know at one point, I think they switched around when Venom and Morbius was gonna be released.
yeah,
Um,
I haven't heard anything about Morbius either.
oh, I have from
Oh, go ahead.
Tyrese. His last name's Gibson, I think. Plays um Roman, I think in Fast and
In
Furious.
Yep,
Um, I did not know he was in the movie until he did
neither
an
did I.
interview, and I'm like, oh, he's in the movie. Okay. Somebody asked him. This is the most frustrating thing. Because the trailer for Morbius came out, so this is gonna spoil Morbius, if you haven't
Hmm.
watched the trailer. The trailer for Morbius came out, and there was things in that trailer that made it seem like it was happening within the MCU, even though this is a Sony movie.
Yeah,
Um, so in my mind, I'm like, Marvel and Sony play nice. This is probably in the MCU. Like they have a good relationship. People are like, oh, I don't want Sony having anything to do with the MCU. I'm like, have a little bit more faith. I feel like Kevin Feige knows what he's doing. If Sony's doing this, they a part of the contract for Spider-Man characters is they have to let Marvel know what they're doing.
yeah,
So if Kevin Feige's like, hey, that's cool, let's work together because we work like they're not just gonna say, screw you, because they have a good relationship with how they handle Spider-Man. So I had faith. I'm like, you know what? I think Morbius is gonna be in the MCU. sure Sony's doing everything, but Marvel's aware, and they're gonna deal with it perfectly fine. Um, then so that led to like a confusion for a year, and then Sony's like, no, this is part of the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, and there's like behind the scenes stuff saying like, oh, it's not taking place in the MCU, or there's like these like images and stuff. Um, then Tyrese was interviewed, and interviewer flat out said, "All right, so this is taking place in the Marvel universe, like the MCU universe." He's like, flat out said yes, and he's like, so like with the Avengers and all that, and he's like, yes. And then within hours, Sony contacted, I think it was IGN or GameSpot or something that was doing the interview. Um, they or breaking the like the news about it. Um, they reached out to them and said, no, 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 no. It's taking place in the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. I'm so frustrated at this point because I'm like trying to wrap my head around what's happening with this movie. Where is it taking place? Because every single thing is contradicting each other. What is happening?
It's important as well
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know a lot about Morbius,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure he's a vampire.
No.
He's not.
He has a disorder. Goes through an experiment, which makes him have vampiric tendencies, I guess, or whatever. But he's not a
Walks
vampire.
like a duck. Talks like a duck.
But he's a swan.
It's probably a fucking duck.
He
But
does fight with Blade in the comics because Blade thinks he's a vampire, and then they have
that's where I was going.
yeah. So
Because
that's
we've already
what
had
mhm.
we had vampires confirmed via Loki.
Yeah, and via Marvel because Blade's
Uh,
happening.
yeah, but and I guess is Morbius supposed to be that gateway, that doorway into sort of thinking about vampires in the MCU?
No, because Morbius is very much a Spider-Man character, and you can have a Blade universe without Morbius in it. But
Well, where did he do?
yeah, but well, the original Blade trilogy, the first movie, I guess, had like a cut scene with Morbius in it, like teasing Morbius.
Oh, did
But
they?
but I think they couldn't show it because Sony had the rights to that character.
Mhm.
Um, so that didn't happen. But yeah, I think I feel like that was the plan because um, I feel like Marvel's like, hey, we want to use Morbius for Blade, and can we work something out while they're renegotiating the contract for Spider-Man to have him stay in the MCU? And I felt like that might have been part of the agreement. That in the Morbius movie, they can have some of the characters from the Marvel universe and integrate it into that universe so that way they can sell more seats, like tickets to the movie. Um,
Well,
and
technically, so is the connection to the MCU via Vulture, the character,
yes,
because he appeared in the trailer and Spider-Man?
but also there was that, but they also showed Spider-Man in a like wall art behind
Yeah,
Morbius walking down an alleyway.
it's been a long time since I've watched that trailer.
I
I
first
just
of
hope,
all,
I just, I just hope it doesn't get the New Mutants treatment.
I still haven't watched New Mutants, so I don't know.
Don't.
Um, I was told that about Dark Phoenix, and I still watch
Yeah,
that, and I regret watching.
I tried to watch it again the other day,
I
and I couldn't.
I don't see myself ever watching that movie ever again. Is the worst X-Men movie I have ever seen. But I the Morbius trailer, sometimes I'll watch it. Like I'm like I'm in the mood to watch it because I thought that trailer was great.
Oh yeah,
So I'm
it's a
excited
great
for it.
trailer.
Yeah. Venom, the two Venom trailers, not so much.
I actually rewatched Venom the other day.
Hmm.
Didn't mind it.
No, yeah. So people are conflicted about this. Venom did great financially,
Oh, I
and
didn't.
yes, that's why they're making another one. Um, but critically, people hate it. Most people, I'd say, like critics hate it. A lot of people love the movie. My brother and his wife among them. They rewatch that movie constantly, and I watched it. I think I've watched it twice. I think it's a pretty good movie. I don't hate it. I thought I thought they did a decent job with it. So I was looking forward to the second one, especially because Andy Serkis is directing it,
Oh, okay.
and I'm like, well, he knows like CGI and motion capture and all that stuff. He's a fan of the comics. He seems to really love Venom and Carnage. So I'm like, this could be even better. Um, After watching those two trailers, I'm not looking forward to the movie anymore. I feel like it's not gonna be good. Like he took instead of taking the best parts of the Venom movie, he took the worst parts and put it in the trailers. And it's like we're gonna enhance on the worst parts. And then after the interviews and everything, because first he like I've seen him in the interviews talking about the movie. I'm like, cool, I'm getting hyped. Now the trailer's out, he's talking. The movie's is like, yeah, it's all about that relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock, and I'm like, I guess, but it's like it's a couples movie or something. It's all about like dealing with your relationships at home or something.
I was just reading. Morbius is due to be released January 28th next year.
Oh,
So
so
not too far away, actually.
2022?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. But Venom's still happening before that. Oh my god.
Yes, Venom's still
We're
this
getting
year,
so
as far
many
as I can see.
we're getting so many movies packed together. It's crazy.
Oh, and I don't know what your situation is over in Canada at the moment with COVID, but
Getting worse.
um, yeah, yep. It's pretty much touch and go whether I can actually go to the cinema. It's like the day I've got to
Mhm.
be like, are we locked down? Are we restricted?
Yeah.
Are the cinemas open?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to say right now. Just for me, the way things are going, I'm expecting another lockdown. We're already confirmed in a fourth wave of COVID, so they've already stopped reopening plans, and I'm guessing we're either going to close down or have some sort of systemic change regarding how businesses operate and how to slow the spread based on medical experts' advice. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's not looking positive, which is a shame because Shang-Chi is right around the corner and I want to see that in theaters. And it's not going to be on Disney Plus because Marvel screwed over Scarlett Johansson over her contract and she's suing
Mhm.
them and they don't want that to happen again. So they're just doing movie releases. So I might have to wait until theaters reopen or until it's on video on demand in order to see Shang-Chi. And I've been looking forward to it for a while. I just seen there's like a
Uh,
scene online release, and I'm like that's awesome. So I can't wait.
I think on the positive side of things, I think Shang-Chi is going to be within a 45-day
Mm-hmm.
window
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah,
come to Disney Plus. So
they're gonna
it's not
shorten
like a
it.
massive wait, but it's one of those movies you kind of want to go see in a
Yeah,
theater.
yeah, definitely. I definitely do. Um, and what sucks is it's a Marvel movie. That
Mm.
movie's gonna get spoiled for me if I'm not able to go to a movie theater and I have to wait for um an on-demand release. So it really sucks.
Mm. Mm.
That's the state of the world we're in right now, so I'm gonna have to deal with that. Um, but there is a lot to look forward to. So I think if we started this a year ago, it would have just I don't think we would have had much to talk about other than like maybe going through a rewatch of this stuff, and reflecting on things. But now we're in the like heat of the moment of Marvel coming back and just giving us everything. Because
And like, and we've only touched on basically the first 2 episodes of What If and a couple of the things that are coming up. Like, we didn't talk about WandaVision or Loki at all.
yeah,
So
there's
I think we've got plenty.
there's a ton to talk about there, and I'm going to use that as an excuse to rewatch those shows because they were great. But also there's like other, we didn't even touch on like the Disney Plus stuff happening because we got Hawkeye coming out after What If, we got Miss Marvel, we got they just announced that Ironheart, so the Ironheart series, the lead character there is going to appear first in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And I think Moon Knight's happening next year as well, and She-Hulk. So there's just a ton of stuff. So I'm glad that we're starting this. We don't have a set schedule of when we're going to release this stuff. So it's going to be like the gaming podcast where we said we don't have time and can work around the schedules to do this weekly, so we kind of wing it as we go. This is going to be the same situation, even though it doesn't make sense that we're using up the time that we could be doing the gaming podcast to fit this into. But we're going to try to make it work because we can talk about this stuff for hours, and we have. It's almost been 2 hours now. So we're going to end it there. Thanks for listening. Let us know what your theories are on how you think the Captain Carter timeline would be different, or the T'Challa as Star-Lord timeline would be different, and what your theories are on what the show is going to go towards in the comments down below on YouTube. I don't know when this is going to appear on audio podcasts or how I'm going to handle that. But if it's anything like our gaming podcast, it'll be available on Google Play and Spotify and all those other services. You can follow us on all our social links and podcast services and everything at thespawntrap.com. All of our links are listed there. But thanks for joining me, Matt.
Anytime. As we said at the top of the show, that we've been trying to get this done for ages, and I'm glad we've finally been able to find the time to do it.
And our other host, which I don't know if he's, other than the reaction stuff, I don't think he's been on any podcasts or anything yet officially, is Jordan. Oh, we got time running out on Discord here. Almost got kicked out. But our other host, Jordan, he couldn't make. I wanted him to be on this first episode. He couldn't make it today. But he will likely be joining us through the Marvel stuff as well. He's a big Marvel fan, MCU fan. He doesn't know much about the comics, but he's always asking me questions. So I feel like that's going to be fun for the podcast as well. Court has no interest in this stuff, so she's going to stick on the gaming side of things while we nerd out about superheroes. So anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll hopefully have more to discuss soon on What If. See you then.